Bernard de Montreal. Preparatory Communication Number 95. The Cosmic Couple. What can the cosmic couple mean for man? What does the cosmic couple imply in the life of man? Does the cosmic couple mean the union of a man and a woman according to psychological laws? Or does the union of a man and a woman within this couple imply a temporal reorganization of their spirit, their emotions, their vitality and their physique, according to the laws of energy? The cosmic couple is an entity in the real sense of the word. An entity that is divided into two parts on the material level, but which is connected in the same light unit on the etheric level. So the cosmic couple is not a value created or created and achievable in matter, but it is a value created and achievable on the etheric level. The cosmic couple is not an entity that can divide itself. It is an entity that works and must work within a synthesis that can only be rendered when man and woman have eliminated, on the material plane, the disjunctive forces of the spirit and the astral that are born of their memory and that are part of human karma. The cosmic couple is an entity that is part of the power of the spirit over matter and the power of matter over spirit. In man, in the human being, the couple that exists is not cosmic. It is a planetary couple. That is, within this couple there is sufficient experience necessary for the balance of what we call spirit and matter. So, for man, the planetary couple is not a perfect couple, is not a couple that can last on the etheric level. So it is not an immortal couple. And since they are not an immortal couple, they are a couple who, either within the natural laws of life, must be broken by death, or a couple who must eventually be separated in life so that the complementary parts can meet with other parts during life, in order to form this time, this last time, what we call the cosmic couple. For the cosmic couple to exist on Earth, the relationship between man and woman must be total. In other words, the spirit, the astral, the vital and the physical must be in perfect harmony. And what determines the perfect harmony of these inferior principles, the yang of man, is the deep intelligence of both parties with regard to the interest they may have within their planetary, inferior, human or yang components. That is, for man to realize on Earth that his partner is part of a cosmic entity, which we call the cosmic couple, the two partners, the two beings, must be in perfect harmony on all levels. And for this perfect harmony to exist or be made possible, it is absolutely necessary that the veils of the ego be totally eliminated. That is, that there must be at least one of the partners who knows that the relationship with the other is a perfect relationship over time. But so that at least one person or partner, or both in an ideal situation, knows that the material relationship of a couple is a relationship that can be perfected and that can eventually lead to what we can call the consciousness of the cosmic couple. It is necessary that these beings have sufficiently gone beyond the egocentric conditions of their consciousness to come to live only the centrical conditions of their consciousness. Centrical conditions that arise from the power of the spirit in them, but in balance with the lower planetary conditions of their yang components. That is, their material components or their planetary components. For man to discover, on a material level, the embryonic facet of the cosmic couple, it is absolutely necessary that he be sufficiently advanced in his intelligence and sufficiently developed in his will to prevent the forces of the spirit, for any evolutionary reasons, from delaying access to the human planetary dimension to a mental, emotional, vital and physical balance which denotes the planetary unity of the possible cosmic couple. It is absolutely impossible for a cosmic couple to be formed if one of the components of man is not realized in the existential, experimental, conscious, planetary formulation of this couple. In other words, for there to be a cosmic couple on Earth, both partners must be unified, harmonized in their spirits, emotions, vitality and physical bodies, their material bodies. And this is not easy, because man, because of his astrality, because of his body of desire, because of the illusions of his ego, because of the veils of his ego, can very easily think, believe, that his partner is part of this luminous entity that must eventually be recognized as an aspect of what we call the cosmic couple. Man, because of his emotional insecurity, because of the planetary conditions of life and because of his life plan, can easily be misled. That is, led to meet a partner who is not part of the cosmic couple, but who is part of the planetary couple, and whose experience is necessary to eventually lead him to the realization that the two parts who formed, for a certain number of years, a couple who were planetary, must eventually split, separate, in order to be able to form in another framework of experience what we call the cosmic couple. Man is a being who lives by feelings, he is a being who feeds on feelings. And in the cosmic couple, the feeling does not exist. It does not exist because the feeling is part of the astral consciousness of man. It is part of the insecurity of man, it is part of the lower consciousness of the human being. But as long as man is not in his universal self and is not sufficiently intelligent about the laws of his spirit, he cannot oppose his spirit on the material level. So he is not able to see the work that his spirit does to eventually lead him to a superior connection to his spirit. Therefore, to the intelligent living conditions that he advocates as a human being, he is not able to see beyond the game of the spirit. So he is still in the process of evolution and cannot then form, live, or benefit from what we call the consciousness of a cosmic couple. Humanity today is based in its social organization on the concept or motive of the planetary couple. And this couple is an experimental couple that serves at different levels of evolution in order to create some field of forces in the spirit or in the emotional of man, to perfect him, to bring him further in his vision of things, to bring him to break down emotional barriers that are very powerful and that are part of the domination of the planetary forces over man. But when man enters the cosmic consciousness, when he enters the sanctuary of his own solitude, when he penetrates behind the veils, he realizes that his material dimension, his high egoistic material quality, is capable of creating a balance between the spiritual part and the planetary part, between the cosmic part and the planetary part. And it is only when man has the strength to create this balance, when he has the vision to go beyond the veils created by the spirit for the perfection of subtle bodies, that he is able to begin to create his cosmic couple. A cosmic couple must be created. It cannot be imposed by the spirit. It cannot be imposed by the soul or memory. It cannot be imposed planetarily. The cosmic couple on Earth represents, or will represent, a material aspect of a virtue that will be performed in the ether. But for man to have access to this double consciousness within a single unit, he must be able to transpose the natural quality of his feelings for a partner and elevate the intelligence of his reality beyond the limits imposed by a consciousness bound or concretized in the experience by the feelings that are part of man's memory. Therefore, for man to consider himself united on the level of energy with a being, he must be able to see beyond the limitations imposed by life or experimental consciousness, and elevate above these limits his vision of things, the necessity of his life, the needs of his life. In other words, he must be able to incorporate spirit into matter, yin into yang, and no longer suffer from the power of spirit on a material level. And when man no longer suffers from the power of the spirit on the material level, he is in perfect harmony with himself. That is, he is in perfect harmony with his spirit. That is, he fulfills in matter what the spirit in the depths of everything desires. That is, to be integrated into matter. That is, integrated mentally, emotionally, vitally and physically. But man is not aware of the law of energy. which requires that any integration between it and the lower planes is an integration achieved by the lower. Man has had the impression for a very long time that it is the spirit that can give him what he needs. And in fact it is not the spirit that can give him what he needs. It is he who must tear from the spirit what he needs. And in the case of the cosmic couple, that is, in the case of the couple where there is unity of consciousness on all the lower planes of man, there must be a realization on the part of the ego that it is not the spirit that can create the cosmic couple. It is man. That is, the lower planetary components that have, through suffering, man must realize that the purpose of life is not a purpose created by the spirit, but a goal created by the ego, raised in consciousness by the energy of the spirit, raised in intelligence by experimentation against the spirit, and raised in will by desire to eventually overcome the power of domination of energy on the material plane, so that there is on the material plane a total integration of invisible forces and solid forces. In order for man to know the cosmic couple, he will have to reintegrate his consciousness once again. That is, he will eventually have to realize, beyond his egocentricity, beyond his doubts, beyond the veils of his ego, that the ego once raised in consciousness is no longer subject to the laws of energy. And that from that moment on, the ego becomes the master on earth. And that its control depends on its ability to compromise unilaterally with the spirit or the dominium of the spirit. And the dominium of the spirit is very vast. Because the spirit being energy, the spirit infiltrates into the spirit, the emotional, the vital and the physical of man. And the ego, at some point in its life, when it becomes more and more fused with energy, realizes, or must realize, that the relationship between the spirit and it is a relationship of unity. That is, that the spirit must serve him. And in the formation of the cosmic couple, it is the spirit that must serve man, and no longer man the spirit. And this is very occult and very difficult to understand, and very important to understand. Because as long as man will serve the spirit within the couple, he will live a planetary couple. That is, he will live a couple conditioned by laws of energy exchange, by laws of conjunction, by laws of slower or slower integration, by laws that will make him a being subject to a choice imposed by the spirit, either without his knowledge or by telepathic means. So if man realizes in his couple that there is not perfect unity, that is, there is not perfect balance on all levels, and I mean on all levels, he will one day have to realize that the couple he knows is not a perfect couple. It is an important couple, that it is a couple who has a level of perfection, which is a couple that has already reached a certain level of perfection in terms of evolution, but which is not a perfect couple. Because for a couple to be perfect, there must be no interference between the power of the spirit and the mental, emotional, vital and physical activity of man. And this is very, very subtle. For there to be no power of interference, for there to be no interference, I mean, between the spirit and man, man must be sufficiently intelligent about the laws of his spirit. He must be sufficiently in his will. In other words, that he has understood the laws of the spirit to enter into his will, in order to break once and for all the planetary power of organizing the spirit for man, but at the same time against the ego. It is obvious that the spirit, because of its energetic position, because of its power, can impose on man, by the veil of its spiritual astrality, living conditions that favor the evolution of man and woman. But at some point, the evolution of man and woman must take another direction. That is, at some point, man must go beyond the stage of evolution and enter the creative phase. And for man to enter the creative phase, it is absolutely necessary that he can use the energy of the spirit. That is, the intelligence that passes through his ego, and that he can, by his will, integrate this intelligence against the influential forces from the outside who will always seek to prevent the formation, on the material level, of a cosmic couple. Why should there be interference with the formation of a cosmic couple on Earth? For the simple reason that a cosmic couple represents the cessation of what we call planetary evolution. When one being, or rather two beings, are united in a creative energy, there is no longer any planetary evolution for them. There is cosmic evolution. But cosmic evolution is very different from planetary evolution because at this level, everything is creative and everything depends on the perfect integration between the etheric brain of man and his material brain. Thus, from that moment on, man, instead of being subjected in his vital expression, becomes creative in his vital expression, and the cosmic couple no longer belongs to those aspects of involution that make the man obligated to the woman, and the woman obligated by the man. The two are automatically united in the same consciousness that pulses in the spirit. The vital, the physical and the emotional, in order to allow them, on the material level as on the other levels but in a different way, to exercise their right to be. And it is only within a cosmic couple that there is the right to be. That is, The right to be what one wants. The right to manifest what one wants. The ability to manifest what one wants. But for man to have the ability to manifest materially what he wants, he must be sufficiently intelligent and sufficiently voluntary. He must be able to create the circle around the great polarity of man, who is the yin and yang, or the spiritual aspect and the material aspect. He must be able to integrate, to force, to imprison, if you will, the matter and the spirit within a circle that only he, on the material level, can create. Because only he on the material level has succeeded in bringing down into the matter the energy of the spirit, and has succeeded in integrating into his matter the power of this spirit beyond subjective conditions, and subjected to an egocentric ego that lives according to the laws of memory or according to the laws of feelings. So the cosmic couple, or the two beings that will form the cosmic couple in the future, will be beings who will know the laws of the spirit, who will recognize the plane of matter as being an extremely important plane to the spirit, because it is this plane that will eventually become the dwelling place of the spirit. And as long as man is not intelligent enough to understand this, he will be subject to living a planetary couple, to experiencing the experience of a planetary couple, and there will never be a perfect balance between him and his partner. Because there will always be between him and his partner a kind of interference, a kind of imbalance, a kind of inability to realize himself as a couple, in a creative, unitary and unlimited way. i.e., without the ability of external forces to interfere against them. The cosmic couple is an entity in the sense that when two spirits meet and two materials unite, an etheric bond is created between these two realities, and this bond eventually becomes the force that unites the spirit to the matter. Let me explain. When the spirit becomes subjugated by the ego, that is, when the ego has enough intelligence and will to subjugate the spirit to it, the spirit explodes at the level of the atomic consciousness of man certain energies that form what we call the etheric double. And when the etheric double is built in both partners, it is from that moment on that these two doubles become the active forces. That is, the creative forces. That is, the forces that use the intelligence of the spirit as the density of matter to maintain the balance between energy and matter on the material plane, or activate on the etheric plane the power of love that becomes the organizational and creative force of the new initiates immortalized in their own light. So the cosmic couple is a couple that has a function, not only on the material level, but especially on the etheric level. But as man is not yet ready to meet his partner on the plane of the ether, he must at first recognize him and meet him on the plane of matter. And for this to happen, He must be able, as a man or a woman, to know in a profound way that indeed both are part of the same unity. That must be achieved through the obstacles imposed on human consciousness by external forces that do not want, or want, to delay the explosion on the material level of what we call the cosmic couple. Man, because of his ability to think, has divided himself. He believed that his reality was his spirit, when in fact his reality is the integration of his spirit and matter. And as long as man believed that his reality was his spirit, he forgot that the integration of his spirit and matter was the culmination of his evolution, was the inevitable point of the formation on earth of a junction between the timeless and the temporal. And as long as man cannot or will not be able to realize that the junction between the timeless and the temporal is the very formation of his cosmic consciousness, is the very formation of his universal consciousness, he will never benefit from what we call the cosmic couple. Because man, because of his subjective thoughts that create feelings, will always see himself as a being subject to a particularity that is above his matter. A particularity that we cannot call the spirit. But the nature of the spirit is not yet understood by man. Because man always understands reality through the veil of words, so man always understands reality through philosophy. And it is philosophy that has divided man. It is philosophy that has created and imposed on man the consciousness of yin and yang, the consciousness of duality. And it is the awareness of duality that has prevented man from being able to use the two aspects of duality to create another reality that we call the double. The double in man must be created. And as long as man feels energy in him, it is not the energy of the double that he will feel, it will be the undifferentiated energy that seeks to pass through the double to settle down, to fix itself to its lower reality, so that from this lower reality the double can be created. In other words, the immortal must be totally stable, totally static in energy. The immortal must not feel energy in him, since he must himself be the controller of energy. But this is not the case for man. In man there is always a perception of energy in him. And as there is perception of this energy, he is mentally, astral, vital and physical incapable of living a total and static integration of the energy. So he is unable to transfer this energy to a point in his reality that is outside matter, which is part of his consciousness, his lining, his cosmic consciousness. So, he is unable to recognize the difference between his spirit and his double. He tends to take the spirit for the double and the double for the spirit. When, In fact, the spirit of man is only energy in the process of evolution, in the process of descent into matter. And the only reality of man is his double that is not yet created. And that he must create as he recognizes the important realization that it is from his will in matter that he brings down the energy of the spirit into matter. Through the intelligence that knows the games of the spirit. To destroy once and for all the energy of the spirit and integrate this energy into matter so that it this energy can explode the atomic structures of its material component that will then create the Morontia double of man. And it is from this moment that man begins to understand the laws of the cosmic couple. It is from this moment that man can live on the material plane or on the plane of the ether in relation to a partner who is made, who is created, who is mounted and constructed in the same way, and who can easily, on the mental plane, on the astral plane, on the vital plane and on the physical plane, form with him a unity that is total and indivisible. That is to say, a unity that cannot be the product of a historical convention or a social convention, which cannot be the product of a karmic need, which cannot be the product of an experiential necessity. But which is the product of the will and intelligence of each partner to form, for each partner, a condition of life in matter as a future condition of life in ether, which is part of the possible progression of supramental intelligence on earth and cosmic will on earth. So, the cosmic couple is a reality that is new to man. It is a reality that will be understood by man during his experience, during his struggle with energy. It is not a reality that will be understood for man within a metaphysical or spiritual philosophy. The cosmic couple must be created. The circle must be established around the yin and the yang, around the spirit and the matter, so that the spirit and the matter are elevated, in the sense that the spirit and the matter are totally integrated. And the integration of spirit and matter can only be done under the constant pressure of the cosmic being, who becomes more and more aware of his material reality, and more aware of the laws of spirit in him, so that he can form on earth a link that will bind this being or this couple with other beings and other couples who will eventually form the occult, paranormal and immortal infrastructure of the new race. But for man to understand what the cosmic couple means, he must be able to recognize, in his life as a couple, that the bond he has established, which he has known for years, often many years, is part of his planetary experience, is not part of his cosmic experience. And for him to recognize this, he must be sufficiently in his intelligence. In other words, his intelligence must have been sufficiently formed by the struggle between the ego that wants to bring down the energy of the spirit into matter, and the spirit that wants to interfere with the ego in any way so that the latter can see the veils that are part of his planetary consciousness. So we must not blame the spirit of man and we must not blame the ego of man. But we must realize, on the human level, that the ego of man is as important as the spirit of man, and that the spirit of man is as important as the ego of man. And until man has realized this, it will be impossible for him to blow up, neutralize his planetary couple and realize that this planetary couple is not the cosmic couple. And if the planetary couple is to be the cosmic couple, then man will know it. Will have to realize it too. And if it is not, man will know it and man will also have to realize it. In other words, there will come a time in the evolution of man, in the experience of man as he experiences the integration of his energy with his matter. There will come a time when man can no longer lie to himself, when man can no longer hide behind feelings that are fraudulent evidence of the power of the spirit or the power of the astral, against the interest of his conscious ego. That is, against the interest of his ego made intelligent and voluntary and now ready to create the third aspect of cosmic consciousness, which is what we call the universal love. So it will be necessary for man to be able, in a very clear way, to realize the condition of his planetary couple, to see his planetary couple, and really to realize if his planetary couple is a real couple, if it is a couple that must eventually immortalize itself in a unity, or if its planetary couple is simply a couple that has served for a transitional experience. And which must eventually lead to another experience, which this time will be seen precisely, will be realized precisely by the ego, and not imposed by conditions of evolution, or for conditions of evolution, under the gaze of memory or under the powerful influence of the spirit. If we say that one day man must be master of the earth, it is important that he also be master of his matter. That is, that he be master of himself. That is, that he be master in the spirit, in the emotion, in the vital and the physical. If man is not master on these planes that are part of him, how can he ever be master of matter? And since man is a sentimental being according to culture, civilization, to which he belongs, and it is obvious that in the Western world, his contamination is much greater than it can be in other cultures. Because already in the Western world duality has been raised to such a level that man today is unable to see the difference between his spirit and his matter. He is unable to realize the difference between his spirit and matter. So much so that he sees his spirit different from his matter. And one day man will have to realize that there is no difference between his spirit and his matter. Since his matter is made of spirit. Since his matter is spirit. So if man is not able to see that there is unity, that there must be unity between yin and yang, If man is not able to see that there must be unity between spirit and matter, he can never create the double. He can never create, in other words, that level of cosmic consciousness which is part of the integration of the spirit into its matter, which explodes the subtle sub-planes of its matter to create on another plane a luminous form which is similar and parallel to the one it knows in matter. And it is from this moment that the cosmic couple is formed. And the cosmic couple will be formed on earth when men have realized that they must no longer be subjected in any way to the power of their spirit. But man cannot achieve this until he has suffered enough from the conditions of the spirit, until he has suffered enough from the conditions of memory, until he has been sufficiently purified by the suffering that arises from the work that the spirit does when he descends into the lower planes of man. When he descends into the spirit, the emotion, the vital and the physical, to live or to achieve his integration. The spirit must live. And the spirit cannot live outside of matter. The spirit outside matter is only an undifferentiated aspect of the relationship between the pure cosmic and the imperfect cosmic. So for the spirit to realize its reality, for the spirit to manifest itself, it must become a creator. And for him to become a creator, he needs an action plan, and his action plan is the material. Thus its plan of action is the spirit of man, the emotional of man, the vital and physical of man. Hence the integration, hence the fusion, hence the perfection of the subtle bodies of man, hence the passage of man from a planetary state to a cosmic state, hence the possible formation of the cosmic couple. Man is a being who is totally ignorant. Man is a being who is not capable, and who has never been able to tame the spirit in him. Man has always been tamed, subjugated by the spirit, because he has always been subjected to his astrality. That is, he has always been subjected to feelings. And it is these feelings that have formed the barrier between spirit and matter. The spirit may want to penetrate into man in every possible and imaginable way. But there is always in man this incredible barrier that is his memory that delays this descent. And when man is ready to experience the descent, he automatically suffers shocks from the spirit, because his mental matter, his emotional matter and even his vital and physical matter is affected, is congested by his astral consciousness, by the external influences of himself. How do you expect man to be realized? Man to realize what he is. Man to realize his consciousness as a power. Man to realize his consciousness as a master. Man to realize his consciousness as a unity of yin and yang. That he lives his consciousness within a circle that imprisons yin and yang, and that subjects yin and yang to the pressure of this circle power, which is the power of the circle of love. If he is unable to overcome the illusions created by the spirit through the astral conditions of his planetary consciousness, let man speak of love. Yes. But that man lives love. It is not yet time for him, because he is still far too passionate about the feeling of love. He is still far too attached to the sentimental conditions of love to destroy the power of yin over his matter, to destroy the power of the spirit over his matter. And as long as man does not have enough doubles, as long as he has not developed enough parallels between his solid matter and his luminous matter, it will be impossible for him to begin to taste what is, or can be, what we call cosmic love through the cosmic double. He will only do philosophy, he will only be suspended from a chandelier, the chandelier of love that he believes to be cosmic. Cosmic love is not a realizable amount of consciousness. Cosmic love is a definable quantity of power, of will, in consciousness. It is man who determines his cosmic love. It is man who determines where his cosmic love begins. It is not the spirit that can impose, or make him see, or give him the impression of cosmic love. And this illusion must be understood, otherwise man will never be able to realize himself as a cosmic couple. So he will never be fully happy in love on earth. For there to be happiness, that is, balance in love on earth, there must be perfect harmony between the spirit, the emotional, the vital and the physical of man. And when I say harmonization, I mean harmonization between all these plans. There is none of these plans that should not be more or less harmonized.